let's get started then. So Justine today is going to be talking to us about sustainability curricula for cultural heritage conservation. And I'm going to do just a short introduction to Justine and then pass over to her. So Justine has specialised knowledge in collections care, conservation and green museum practices. She holds a bachelor's in art history from San Francisco State University and a dual master's in museum studies and business administration from John F. Kennedy University. Justine currently works as the program manager for the Preservation of Indigenous Collections and Cultural Resources program at the UCLA Getty program in the conservation of cultural heritage. So thanks very much, Justine, for agreeing to do this today. We're all very much looking forward to your presentation, and over to you.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to express my gratitude to ICON and the Sustainability Network event organizers for this opportunity to share our research. And as UCLA is a land-grant institution, I would like to acknowledge our university is located, Our university is located on the unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples, the traditional land caretakers of Tovangar, which includes the Los Angeles Basin and Channel Islands. We pay our respects to their ancestors, elders, and relatives, past, present, and emerging. The UCLA Getty Conservation Program was awarded a National Endowment for the Humanities grant to research methods for embedding sustainability in our cultural heritage conservation curriculum. The program is establishing sustainability as a core perspective in the way it teaches conservation. By weaving this influence into sustainable treatment, research, ethics, and decision-making, graduates and emerging conservators will bring these skills into their practice and careers. In this presentation, I'll give an overview of our methods and explore some of the ways we've been connecting both locally and globally within the conservation discipline and with allied and external disciplines. I will describe some of the projects we've been collaborating on, lab sustainability initiatives, and innovative frameworks that may be applied to conservation education. Finally, I'll show you the results of an international survey, which may serve as a baseline for the state of sustainability education and conservation. One of the established goals of this project was to connect with our campus communities and make global connections with other conservation graduate and training programs. We have been collecting and developing teaching methods and exercises to model in the classroom and incorporate a framework for sustainability without necessarily expanding an already packed curriculum. We have applied for the next phase of a multi-year grant to implement our findings in our own program with the help of consultants, and are looking for ways to partner with like-minded programs on a study to investigate barriers to incorporating sustainability in courses. Our long-term goal is for these materials from our research to be made open access with links available through UCLA's eScholarship platform. Our core project team includes Glenn Wharton, Chair of the Conservation Program, and Ellen Perlstein, Professor in Conservation and Information Studies, who are co-PIs on this research grant. Our lab manager, William Shelley, has also been instrumental in researching lab sustainability and providing that context throughout the research process. We also have a wonderful advisory board, many of whom are both professors and practicing conservators. We met with them quarterly throughout the project for necessary feedback, connections, and perspectives. Prior to my appointment with UCLA Getty, I was working with Key Culture, a nonprofit organization based in the Netherlands that's dedicated to promoting action on sustainability within cultural heritage. Its broader aim is to assist all kinds of arts and culture institutions and businesses to green their practices through coaching and a set of manuals called Key Books. There's already evidence that these manuals have been incorporated into teaching programs for conservation and museum studies. Their sister organization, Sustainability and Conservation, has been developing a greener solvents project. They recently published this handbook focusing on decision-making for organic solvents used in conservation, with the aim of reducing the amount of toxic chemicals used in conservation labs for improved human health and planetary health. Through partnership with SIC, the UCLA Getty Conservation Program and the Getty Conservation Institute are both participating in this project to produce resources and test greener solvent alternatives on a number of materials. We plan on working with the students to build this research into their projects based on the media focus currently being explored. Through this opportunity, they will gain hands-on experience studying chemical interaction between the media and substrate, as well as evaluating qualities of these materials, such as their life cycle assessment, chemical composition, toxicity levels, and disposal methods. The Our Ancestors Knew Best project is another example of an initiative looking into greener cleaning methods through research from traditional ecological knowledge. The aim of this project was to compile and record from 10 countries in Southeast Asia a basic understanding of traditional methods in textile preservation, including natural cleaning agents and solutions that are both cost-effective and eco-friendly. These include seeds, bark, leaves, roots, and juices used as textile surfactants and detergents and for warding off pests. This information was then translated into accessible conservation data through plant database tables and recipes that can be applicable to modern-day conservation. It is also important to note that the longer-term goal of this project aligns with the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, of which number 12, responsible consumption and production, is the most compatible. Finding this balance between protecting people, the planet, and the object is essential for working towards sustainable methods of collections care. As the next stage of the project, the UCLA Getty program is collaborating with representatives of the Our Ancestors Knew Best team to continue this research in North America. We have already begun planning a workshop on plant-based pest control to be featured at the next ATALM International Conference for Indigenous Archives, Libraries, and Museums. Please reach out to me if you know anyone who might be interested in contributing plant specimens to this project. Our program has dedicated conservation and research laboratories for students and faculty at the Getty Villa in Malibu. The labs are located in a purpose-built building where students are able to take classes and do their practical work in 2 large laboratory spaces for equipment used in teaching and research. Our lab at the UCLA Coatson Institute contains microscopes and is additionally equipped for metallographic sampling and analytical instrumentation for inorganic analysis. In the summer of 2020, UCLA Getty invited Caitlin Southwick, founder of Key Culture, to give a workshop on sustainability and sustainable practices in the cultural heritage field. In conjunction, the students worked on a sustainability report detailing findings from their investigations into environmentally friendly lab practices and materials. As recommended by the student report, our lab manager has been exploring different programs for lab certification and ways to mitigate the lab's material waste. One of the programs on campus, UCLA Green Labs, conducts a comprehensive assessment of UCLA's lab practices and provides recommendations on how best to reduce your environmental impact. Another certification, My Green Lab, includes a self-assessment to gauge a lab's sustainability practices and help implement changes. Another one we're really excited about is the LEAF program from University College London, which is now available for any research institution looking to improve their sustainability, including outside of the UK. We were pleased to find that the certification program is also in use at the Northumbria program, so perhaps it will catch on to more graduate programs. Looking at locally available resource redistribution sites can be a helpful way to get cheap or free equipment and materials. Our local one is MuseoCycle, which is a network specifically for museum professionals interested in circular material reuse. Our lab was able to source laboratory equipment secondhand from the Getty Conservation Institute, so checking with your partner institutions before disposing of equipment can save a lot of money and mined materials. Some of our students and faculty were involved with building the STITCH project. Sustainability Tools in Cultural Heritage is a life cycle assessment, carbon calculator, and library of case studies and information sheets, funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities and managed by the Foundation for Advancement in Conservation. They are a team of conservators, museum professionals, and life cycle assessment experts working to upload a number of resources to their new webpage, which can help compare materials based on the carbon emissions involved in their manufacture. We hope to incorporate this resource into our student projects as a way to research the environmental sustainability factor of the experiments and treatments students undertake. While this project to embed sustainability in conservation education was at first conceived as an environmental sustainability initiative that would focus on greener treatments and collection storage, it has certainly evolved to be much more intersectional in our approach. The three pillars of sustainability are environmental, social, and economic sustainability, but recently others have proposed 4 or even 5 pillars. I started conceptualizing the overlaps by laying out some of the sustainability factors that affect conservation within the 3 pillars of sustainability, and of course noticed the many intersections that make this a multidimensional puzzle. The Venn diagram helps illustrate these intersections between aspects of sustainability and at a broader level, organizing them into a mind map, which clusters related ideas together. It's also a great way to perform a check of who might be missing in the conversation. Looking into the idea of thinking intersectionally and holistically, I was curious about the origin of the term and found some interesting history about the overlap between racial and gender identities advocated by Professor of Law Kimberly Crenshaw in her theories of intersectional feminism, which later inspired the intersectional environmentalism movement. The decisions involved in conserving heritage are likewise interconnected between the welfare of the object and relinking the intangible heritage of objects and sites to their respective communities and cultural context. Issues involving the disappearance of culturally relevant sites and monuments in disaster-prone areas continuously affect marginalized societies, especially those who do not have the financial capacity to prevent future catastrophe and adapt to the changing landscape. Here I've listed some intersectional mindsets, systems thinking, future thinking, and incorporating multiple perspectives, which translate to core competencies in sustainability education. Systems thinking is often used in business contexts to develop a self-diagnosing and evolving organizational culture that thinks critically about the way operations are facilitated based on stocks in and flows out of a system. This can be tangible, such as goods, or intangible, such as information. Interventions to the system can have distinct effects depending on where the change takes place and how much leverage is applied. The interrelationships between moving parts are key to seeing dynamic patterns of change, rather than simply the parts themselves without any context of function. By understanding the whole system, these complexities are more manageable and alterable. Industry sustainability leaders in museum education are turning towards systems thinking as a model for many contexts, including exhibitions, community engagement, and financial sustainability. Young and Love's Manual for Systems Thinking in Museums features projects in each of these museum departments where leadership has adopted the use of systems theories to understand the complex, emergent, and chaotic nature of changes, both internal and external to the organization. Future thinking works in tandem with systems thinking to consider the outputs or consequences of our system. The impact of our decisions we make now are felt generations into the future. Some references in the literature were made to backcasting, or imagining the future you want and then systematically working backwards to plan a path forward. But of course, this can't be accomplished if the system and its moving parts are not first understood. These moving parts are not inanimate, of course, so the idea of incorporating multiple perspectives plays an important role. Frameworks for integrating the Indigenous concept of two-eyed seeing have been woven into many university programs, notably in Canada. The focus is put on our relations to one another for interconnected learning, creating awareness and exploration across knowledge systems for a trans-systemic approach. This involves exploration of new perspectives and finding innovative ways to be interdisciplinary, adaptive, and resilient. My research has also included over 70 interviews with educators and practitioners in sustainability and in a variety of cultural heritage disciplines. Cultural heritage practitioners demonstrate a transdisciplinary approach to sustainability and cultural heritage. Some of these connections were made through researching resources on the subject, and others were a result of our survey outreach. Of these many interviews, some recurring themes included the following: a necessity for integration of concepts as part of a larger cultural heritage ecosystem, using practical challenges involving expense, time, and availability of materials to build decision-making skills, and incorporating a future-facing outlook in developing skills for adaptation. Some also mentioned the need to evaluate what we consider ideal treatments and rethink the life expectancy of materials. There is strong agreement that students are driving many of these projects in a sustainable direction through their choice of research topics and suggesting safer alternatives for treatments. We developed and field tested some classroom exercises in Professor Perlstein's collections management class, which is a course available to both conservation and information studies students. The overarching project for the quarter was a collection survey of physical objects from Southeast Asia, which students assessed for a hypothetical loan to the Philippines as part of a fictional exhibition. The exercises included scenarios having to do with sustainable local procurement, insect ID for pest mitigation, and communication strategies for emergency preparedness. Active learning through tabletop and scenario exercises can prove an effective and engaging approach to bring in sustainability as a cross-cutting theme within the existing curricula. The first exercise on sustainable local procurement was designed for students to get a sense of what it's like to find mount-making supplies while working abroad or in a country where they're not familiar with local vendors. The next exercise for IPM strategies introduced a deck of insect cards so students could look for materials, vulnerabilities, and resilience as part of pest risk management. They were able to use familiar objects they had been examining as part of their condition survey project. The final exercise we introduced was the Incident Command System, a widely endorsed methodology that can be integrated into any institution's disaster recovery plan. It provides a centralized and standardized way to manage incidents regardless of magnitude and is used in all kinds of jurisdictions and disciplines. This exercise was designed to have students assume roles within the ICS protocol and work through the same scenario, a hurricane in the southern United States, to plan the emergency evacuation of vulnerable collections objects in a museum and library. I also participated in one of Professor Wharton's metals class, helping do initial research on a project the students worked. They worked on testing natural corrosion inhibitors and bringing in a guest speaker from the GCI who is performing research on greener solvent alternatives. We're hoping that through these kinds of projects and interactions, students will be interested in forming green teams that collaborate with sustainability officers and facilities managers in their future institutions. Or should they go into private practice, bringing this awareness to their studio operations and to their clients? Through interacting with the sustainability hubs on campus, we discovered a multitude of initiatives, many of which involve local communities. I audited a UCLA class titled Understanding Disciplinary Epistemologies through the Institute of the Environment and Sustainability at UCLA, which focused on interdisciplinary issues in the discipline of sustainability research and allowed for exploration of how these subjects are developing in other disciplines. This class was a unique opportunity to engage with literature and Socratic dialogue to experience firsthand the way graduate sustainability classes are taught on campus. There were many takeaways that apply mostly directly to our incorporation of the three pillars in our nesting of systems thinking, future thinking, and trans-systemic knowledge into curricular activities. It is clear from in-class discussion that we need to rethink living on a finite resourced planet in connection with nature. However, building compatible solutions is less disruptive than forcing radical landscape change. Western science and technology often lacks the larger perspective inherent to native sciences' kincentric multiverse, which includes deeper wisdom and a wide range of perception spanning many generations past and into the future. Professor of Sustainability Education, Matthias Barth, describes education for sustainability as a vision of education that seeks to balance human and economic well-being with cultural traditions and respect the Earth's natural resources. The Education for Sustainability framework highlights the need for a more holistic and global approach to sustainability literacy. Rather than the more traditional and transactional styles of lecturing to pass on knowledge, this method puts the power of decision-making in the learner's hands. Integrating education for sustainability involves a complex interweaving of sustainability logic and perspective into course study. Universities have been facing pressure to transform their programs to suit a new generation in a changing world that needs to be equipped with the tools to cooperatively solve complex contemporary issues. Higher education is given the responsibility for nurturing new key players that are to lead society towards a more sustainable future, and therefore must undergo massive changes to account for a world that is not static. Higher education for sustainable development aims at individuals who develop necessary competencies, not only to collect and generate knowledge, but also to reflect on the complexity and uncertainty that is inherent in the concept of sustainability. The advent of education for sustainability began in the 1987 report from the World Commission on Environment and Development, which coined the commonly used definition of sustainable development. Sustainable development is development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The use of the terms education for sustainability, EFS, and education for sustainable development, ESD, are used somewhat interchangeably within the literature, with the main issue for the term development being that it can often refer to Western philosophies of economic growth and pretenses about developed societies. Some would argue that to become more sustainable, one must devolve some of these harmful ideologies. Cultural heritage is beginning to embrace the SDGs and find ways to align the goals with their institutional mission and programming. The UN Global SDGs and ESD framework have in common the shift in mindset towards global, systemic, and future thinking methods, which are core to building a sustainable perspective. Decision-making and problem-solving require the ability to view situations holistically, taking into account the pillars of sustainability and the many overlaps between aspects of sustainability. This burgeoning awareness is an important fire to conflicts and climate emergency means culture has to be at the heart of the global response for sustaining the humanities as well as humanity itself. The concept of planetary boundaries is essentially living within the means of our living planet and its natural resources, and coming to terms with the fact that humanity is already living outside these, both socially and ecologically. Therefore, keeping in mind the essential needs for humanity, we can ensure that a thriving humanity is more meaningful in the long term than the focus on growth that is often attributed to successful economies. There are connections between economics and almost every decision made if it uses any resources, money, time, or labor, which of course includes the work we do in conservation. It is a natural progression to view this connection as vital to sustainable decision making. The concept of donut economics suggests a new form of economics that is not casting growth as the main ambition for achieving success and prosperity. This reframing is difficult to conceptualize because GDP growth is currently the primary way we measure economic health. The author of this donut theory, Kate Raworth, places great value in pictures and diagrams as mental images with staying power. So the author bases the donut theory on a diagram with the economy embedded within society, within nature, and powered by the sun. As in systems thinking, there is value in analyzing economic diagrams by interpreting the negative space around equations, descriptions, and variables. What is not being considered, who is not at the table, and how can we help people thrive by meeting those unstated needs? These value-centered approaches provide a learning context for individuals to critically reflect and analyze their own decisions, question the way systems operate in unsustainable and traditional ways, and find their role and sphere of influence as future change agents. This concept of responsible local and global citizenship speaks to the level of accountability that students will need to bring into their projects and careers. It is a people-centric model promoting democratic leadership for team-oriented participation and applies both systems thinking and future thinking in planning and decision-making. While all of the faculty and staff in our program are passionate about sustainability and looking to be more involved with incorporating new teaching methods, we recognize that not all programs have this influence. This was made more apparent through our anonymous survey, which was designed to collect data on sustainability curricula and conservation and cultural heritage preservation programs on a more global scale. I worked with our digital archaeology lab to develop and run this survey in September last year, and they were an amazing help in defining our survey questions to get the results we were looking for and in analyzing data for designing visualizations to share with our advisory board. The survey included questions to help evaluate different strategies for bringing sustainability into program curricula, such as through activities, guest lectures, and site visits, whether sustainability is taught as a separate course or integrated, and which sustainability pillars are represented. The freeform commentary asked about barriers to embedding sustainability, which in some cases resulted in anecdotes about bureaucratic limitations and conflicts, staffing time and resources, and difficulty adopting new techniques or methods due to apathy or lack of testing for certain materials. Out of nearly 100 participants, not including a couple dozen partially filled surveys, you can see that more than half of the respondents include sustainability topics in their curriculum, with 68% integrated throughout. I included the top choices for our question on lab sustainability initiatives as well, which align pretty well with our own lab goals. While much of the resulting data was expected, it was great to see these responses from 21 countries reflecting a broad international interest and a mutual understanding of the difficulties we face in moving the field towards considerations about climate change and making sustainable decisions for our workplaces. Sustainability is about action before there is a need for reaction, and the time is ripe for students in all disciplines to approach all problems through this lens. In higher education, teaching sustainability is a valuable model that should be perceived throughout the entirety of a course so that the message is amplified through a multitude of scenarios, cases, and practical applications. While this phase of the project has ended, there's so much potential that's been uncovered in this exploratory phase. We evaluated the needs of cultural heritage programs to change and evolve, assessing gaps in our knowledge and challenges for integration. We have recently applied for the next tier of the Research and Development Grant, focusing on identifying barriers in the field and in education institutions, and developing methods to mitigate those barriers. Next would be planning the design of curricular materials and a platform for them to live on. We have also been meeting with potential collaborators on campus, working to build bridges between our program and humanities, sustainability sciences, and diversity centers at UCLA. There were many more people involved in this research effort who have contributed mightily to this project, and hopefully we'll be able to invite them back soon to collaborate. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to our discussion and hearing your ideas and approaches.